So this is the part 4, and this is connected, and this is basically explaining how to plug your plugin into the main source code of Nomad. So again, there is a step-by-step documentation here showing exactly what you need to do and containing all the links to the repos that are used to achieve this task. And we prepared here like another visual schema, what's happening here. So this red circle is what was the focus of the part 3. So we now got a plugin and we wrapped it properly into a Python package. So we are now ready to actually make this schema and processing available together to the source code of Nomad. So this is a link to the available Nomad Docker image that you can always spin up either in your local laptop or in your server, but this will contain nothing more than the built-in ELN classes that Sartak showed you at the beginning. That's why we need to make some more steps to have available our custom schema and processing together to the functionalities of Nomad. So there is a dedicated repo that will drive you through that. And what's happening here is just having a Docker file that will instruct how to build this new custom image. So the custom image will just pull the official Nomad image and then install together to that the plugins and then build a new image that you can simply then spin up in your in a Docker container, either in your laptop or in the server of your institution. So that's pretty much what Hampus is gonna tell in the next part. And so I will again leave the screen to him.
So now I moved from the part 3 folder to the part 4 folder here. Again, I left a link in the Zoom chat. And if you're watching all this on video, there should be a link under the video for a reference to this GitHub repository where we have some outline of this tutorial. So now we're on to part 4, where we're about deploying a Nomad OASIS with custom plugins. So we will use the plugins that I just showed how to create in the part 3, and then we will create a custom image of this and deploy it. Here there are some prerequisites again if you want to follow along. Again, you need a GitHub account. It can be created for free here. And if you want to also try to host it, you need to have Docker installed on your computer. So this should work on all types of operating systems, and you can install it here from docs.docker.com/desktop. What we want to do in this part is first to create the Docker image. Then we want to add our plugin from part 3 into this Docker image. And then we need to update permissions. You may or may not need to do this so that we actually have access to get this Docker image. And then finally, we should run the OASIS. So let's just get to it. So the first step here is to create the Docker image. And what we have done here again is that we have prepared a GitHub template repository. And this template repository will run a set of workflows to actually create this Docker image for us and host this Docker image on the GitHub package repository so that we don't need to worry about that. So I'll just follow this link here in the README. And sorry, I meant to open that in a new tab. There we go. So now we are in this Nomad distribution template. And again, we will use this template button like we did in part 3, and we will go ahead and create a new repository. And again, we get this form here from GitHub to fill. We have the Nomad distribution template as the repository template, and we give this a name. So in my case, I will just call this Nomad sintering image. You can call this and then you can give a description. Here you can again choose whether you want to have this be a public repository or a private repository. I will choose public for mine. Then I will go ahead and create the repository. So after this initial setup by GitHub has been done, we can see that there's a bunch of files in here, and there's a README which tells us how to use this template. And there's a little note here saying that the templated repository will run some GitHub action on creation, which might take a few minutes. So after the workflow finishes, you should refresh the page and this message should disappear. I will just go ahead and hit refresh on this page. And then we should see that we have a new README here with some more detailed instructions on how we should use this OASIS distribution. So we can jump back and look in our tutorial here. So what we have done now is that we have created the Docker image to this repository. And now what we want to do is we want to add a plugin, so the plugin that we developed from before. And the way we do this is that we want to modify this plugins.txt file that is in the repository. And this is nothing more than a Python requirements.txt file. So we can stick in any Python package that we want to include there. If you have hosted your Python package already, you're on PyPI or something like this, you can already put it in there. If you just have it on GitHub, we can use the version control capabilities of PyPI to directly point it to a Git repository. And you do this by this Git plus here. So I'll just go ahead and copy this line of code here. And then I will move to our repository and I will locate this plugins.txt file that I mentioned. And we can actually edit this directly in the GitHub UI here, right? So we just hit this edit this file button up here. And then we will just paste this in here. We will add this as one of the requirements. So we have NOMAD measurements, NOMAD material processing, and we have this git nomad syntering.git. And then we will just hit commit changes in here. And then we can give a little message so we can see that we added the sintering plugin. Go ahead and hit commit changes. And if we now move back to the codes tab of this nomad sintering image, we should see that this added sintering plugin here has triggered a workflow. So this workflow here, docker build/push, will go ahead and build our Docker image and push it to the GitHub package registry so that we can use it. And what it actually does is that it runs this Docker file here for the people who know Docker, right? And it will run from GitLab registry npcdf nomad lab. This is what Andrea was showing in the link. We will get the latest develop. So here, if you want to have a specific version, you could modify this here. We will just install Git and so on, and then we will go ahead and install these plugins. And then we will also copy in the config file nomad.yaml that you can also change if you prefer that. Okay, but before we can actually go ahead and download this package, we need to make sure that we have the actual rights for this package, right? So now I see that there is some, this package hasn't really been built yet, so we can go ahead and check the details of this, what is happening. It's built here. Seemed to be some issue before. This just takes a minute or two. And basically this is installing in all of the things that we need, and then it creates the package so that we can just go ahead and download it. Just 1 second. Whilst this is running, just go ahead and go back and look at the tutorial thing here. So we have created the Docker image, we have added the plugin now to the file, and now we need to update the permissions. And for some of you, the package might already be public, so you might not need to do anything. Depending a little bit on your user settings in GitHub, it might be private, and then you either need to make it public, or if you want to really keep it private, then you need to create something called a personal access token so that you can authenticate yourself to creating this image. And you can read more about this on this link here, how to create this personal access token. I will not go through this in the tutorial. But now we can go back here and we can see that the build was successful. In here, it created it and posted it. So if we go back to the main code page here, we should see now on the right here, maybe we need to refresh. Sorry about this. It somehow seems to be in there. And normally you would see the package here. I don't know why the GitHub UI at the moment is somehow lagging. If you click the packages here, you do see it here, right? So we have the nomad sintering image that we can just click on. and now we see the Nomad sintering image here. And in order to make this now public, you go to the package settings here at the bottom right. And then at the very bottom, there is this danger zone here. You can see that my package is already public, but if yours is private, you can change the visibility here, make this into public, type the name and so on to confirm this. In my case, I don't need to change anything. Okay, and then we're on to the next step, which is to run the OASIS. But here I would actually recommend to go back to your repository, because there are a set of instructions already inside of the README here, which are updated with the correct path, which should reflect your OASIS image, so that you can just go ahead and copy and paste these commands. But basically, there is a nomad oasis.zip here file, which we need to grab, which has all of the files that we care about. So I will just go ahead and copy this curl command again, and then I will open now a terminal on my local machine. And then I will make a directory of this, my OASIS, something like this, and then I will change directory into this one, and then I will go ahead and grab this Nomad Oasis zip file. And once this file is downloaded, I will go ahead and unzip it. And we can see that we have created a bunch of files there, and then I will go ahead and change directory into it. So now I am standing in the Nomad Oasis folder. We can have a look at what is inside here, and we can see that we have a configs folder. We have a Docker compose.yaml, which tells Docker what it should pull, what images it should pull. And then there is a .volumes folder where all the data from the Nomad Oasis will be stored. And this is the first thing that we need to change if you are on Linux. So on Mac and Windows, I think this should work out of the box. But if you're running, going on Linux, then you need to change the ownership of this .volumes folder. So you can just run this change ownership command here on the .volumes folder. Provide my password. And then we have changed that ownership. And then that's it. Now we can go ahead and pull our image. So we do this by just typing docker compose pull, and that will go ahead and use this docker compose YAML file and pull all of the images that we need to do. We see here that this is rather quick for me because I have a lot of the stuff cached. So Docker is kind of smart at this. For you, this might take a minute or two because you need to pull the whole Nomad the first time that you do this. But I have now pulled it, so I can start it up. And the way you do this is to just do docker compose up to start it up. And then we will do it in detached mode with the flag D to not have everything being printed out, basically. So I'll just run this command, and this will take a minute or two to start everything. So just to recap while that is running, we created the repository here, which created our package. And now we actually see that it's loaded here. I don't know why this is not working before, where it says Nomad sintering image. So this is our image that we created. And we modified this plugins.txt by adding the sintering plugin, which reran and created new image automatically for us. And then we went ahead and we got the config from the repository. We changed the ownership of the .volumes folder if we were on Linux. We pulled the latest image, and then we go ahead and start the machinery. And if we now check back, it's still being started. It needs a few more seconds. Get up and running. So this is basically starting all of the containers that are needed for running a local Nomad Oasis. And this is typically something you could test this out on your local machine, but this is something that does better by running on a dedicated server, so that it's also accessible by all the other people. But this is something that we have set up with people on universities all over Europe, and it's usually not a problem when you just have a Docker image to tell the IT guy that they can set this up. The advantage of also having all the config being run through this GitHub repository is that when we run changes and so on in the GitHub repository, we can just tell whoever is in charge of the server to do a Docker Compose pull to get the latest version and to start up the server. Then we should have these changes. So while we wait the last few seconds for this to start up, we can see if there are some questions already. Okay, yes, please go ahead, Fabian. Yeah, it's in the text. Okay, suppose I added some functionality to my custom plugin. Do I have to rebuild the OASIS package via GitHub, or is this somewhat included by using the git include in the plugins? Do I have to rebuild the OASIS package? So when you include it in the plugins.txt, so when you modify this plugins.txt, you saw that we ran this added sintering.plugin. This was the commit when we committed the change to this plugins.txt. And this causes this workflow to run. So this was this Docker build push here. And this basically rebuilds the image for you, right? By changing these plugins. So if you were to now update your plugin somewhere, you need to trigger this. So either you can do this by updating the version that you're requiring in your plugins.txt, if you're requiring a version. So I can show how this works. If you code here, in the bottom here, there is a how to include the plugins, and you can either include it from the PyPI, you can include it from Git, and here you can say different versions of this, right? So you could give it the commit, and this is actually what I would recommend. Just including it from Git is a little bit like unclear, then you're not really sure which version you are running and so on. So it might be better to give a commit message. So then you can update this commit. If if you're just including it from PyPI and you really just want the image to be regenerated, even if you haven't changed anything in the plugins.txt, you can also go to the Actions tab here, and then you can find the Docker workflow here. And then there is a workflow dispatch event trigger. So you can click this Run Workflow button here, and this will actually rerun the whole workflow of adding this plugin there. I hope that answered the question. After every commit, yeah, exactly. And if you want to trigger it manually, you can do this from the Run Workflow. That would be the short summary. Okay, and now it seems like everything has started up in here in the meanwhile. So we can just check if that was the last thing that we needed to do. We did the Docker Compose up, and now we can just check by looking at this endpoint here whether the OASIS is alive. So we can click this, and it says I am alive. So everything seems to be up and running. And now we can just navigate to our NOMAD OASIS. This will be mounted now on localhost. Just click this link here, and we will have our own OASIS running. So we can see that it's an OASIS by this little green dot up here. So it's the OASIS logo, and this is basically the same as what Sartak was running, just that it's now running on our local machine. I'm already logged in. You just log in here. We are just using the NOMAD keycloak for this. If you want to use your own institute keycloak and so on, again, there are documentation for how to do this. Of course, all your data is still locally, so no one else can still access it, right, unless you provide them access to your machine. But we still use the credentials and everything from NOMAD. And to see that our package is actually loaded in, we can go to the NOMAD meta info here under Analyze. And then we can see that we do indeed have this NOMAD sintering here now, which we created. And we can see that this my schema, which was the one that was included by default with the name and the messages there. But we also have this sintering here, which now, in addition to what Sartak had in his, also has this data file property here. And again, the steps are overwritten so that we have this initial and final temperature. So the last thing I thought I'd show now is that we can actually just also create an upload. So I'll create a new upload here. Again, publish uploads, create new upload. And then now when we hit create from schema here, this is now a built-in schema because it's a plugin. So I will do my sintering process here, and then we can navigate all the way to the bottom. There's the other category. Again, there's documentation on how you can provide categories for all of your schemas so that they get nicely categorized. For now, I didn't do that, so it's just ends up here under the other. And we can see that we have the sintering class here, which we defined. So if we go ahead and hit create on that one, it will go ahead and run. So slow now, Zoom is running, right? And here we see now that we have the same thing that Sartak had with the description box and so on, but we have this data file. And because we use this file edit quantity, we get this functionality in the GUI where we can upload a file here. So I can hit this button here, and I can choose a file. So here I have prepared this sintering example.csv from before. And if I upload that file and now hit the save entry button here, we can see before that nothing is filled here. And if we hit the save button now, then our functionality that we added, the code will run in the background. And we can see that now we do have the steps of heating, cold, and cooling with the initial temperature, the final temperature, and the duration here all filled out. So that is it. We have developed our plugin, and we have added the plugin to an OASIS image like Andrea showed, and now we have it running on our local computer. So if there are some questions, we can do that now. Alexander, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe it's not explicitly to this, but so for us, it would be very interesting to have like an entity called like measurement data, which can be like arbitrarily shaped for us. For us, it's always like HDF5 or Nexus because we use camels to generate our stuff. But it doesn't depend on like it doesn't depend on the physics we're doing. Everything from photoluminescence to electrical measurements, everything is HDF5. So how would I? So could I do like a generic entry that like parses this HDF5 or always displays this? Because right now I don't have or I don't understand how it would link a measurement file with an experiment easily to have it like navigatable in the OASIS. Maybe you could comment.
So you mean the actual data file, or
yeah? So I perform my measurement and I get an HDF5 file that full of entries, full of metadata, and now I just want to like drag and drop this onto the experiment that I described, like running PL with a 532 nanometer laser and so on.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
How would I connect this? Is there a nice way that we can connect this right now? Is my question, kind of.
Yeah. So there's like two options. So one option is to do what I did here, right? Is to have a data file quantity where you can drop this file. And then you just in the normalize function, you extract the data that you have and so on, and then you build up the files. And then this is linked here to this file, and you can view this file. And if you have an HDF5, then you can use the HDF5 file viewer that's in here, right, to see this. Or you use the NOMAD parsers, which I didn't go into at all in this tutorial, which also exists, which can match on files. So this is what Sartak showed with the XRD, where you can match to certain files, so that when you upload a file, you can basically write a function which looks into this file and sees, what type of data is this? And then you see, this is a PL measurement. Okay, then I will make a PL instance, and then I will fill this PL instance with the data from this file. And that's the second option. And then you can still link the file here. So if you upload something, if we go to the upload here again now, and I upload, just to show how that works, let's see if I have the same. I have some other RASX file here that Sartak had, right? So if I upload this file here, you can see now that that it actually matched this file, this RASX file here. It created an entry around this RASX file, which is a raw file XRD data. And then it created also an ELN entry for this that we can work in to add additional metadata. And in this file, we also have a link to the data file here. So there's a link to the data file so that these are sort of linked together. And then we extract out the information from this file so that we can do plots, for example, of the logos and so on. Not sure if that exactly answered the question, but we can also have a chat later on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But there is a new feature that actually supports HDF5 like references and so on, so you can even navigate now the HDF5 files. I'm just looking for the docs.
Yes.
I'll post it in the chat very quickly.
Exactly. I think Amir said that the docs are not quite ready yet for this, but he has written a functionality for HDF5 so that this can also be linked and directly linked to custom quantities in a YAML schema and so on, so that you don't need to do this whole plugin necessarily for that. So that's something that's coming up as well and might be of interest for you guys. Do you have any deadline on where the documentation will be?
Yeah, maybe I can answer. Just it's simply these features are being added like during these weeks and during these days. So usually the documentation should follow together. So basically, is rolling up together to the features. So.
Yeah, so we work on a continuous development schedule, right? So whenever new features are added, we typically add documentation for it. Might be that the features get pushed a week or two before the documentation is actually there, but in general, we push the documentation together with with the features. That being said, our documentation is, not perfect. I don't think any documentation is. So if you're having some issues with understanding some feature or something like this, then please don't hesitate to write to us in Discord, and then we can also try to both explain directly to you there in Discord how this works, but also update the documentation, and maybe you can even help out to review the documentation updates. And I think that's the best way that we can get it functioning.
So thank you, Hampus, for this very nice result you provided. So we got at the end of this tutorial a working OASIS with our plugin implementing the same schema that Sartak showed at the beginning, that was just produced in a YAML file. So that was a very nice result. And basically, this is again the schema I showed before. Maybe I can just add one more info. So I told you before that we have this Docker image here that is the official one that we provide, and we are pulling this one into this dedicated repo here to install it together to the plugins. But if you want to get more familiar just with the use of NOMAD, and especially with running an OASIS in your local, you can just simply pull this image and follow the last commands that Hampus showed you before, and that I am again posting here in the chat. So what I posted in the chat is just this page of our documentation is how to install an OASIS. So basically, what you need to do to get started is just running these six commands here, and you will, as you see here, pull, in this case, an official image instead of your own image. So it's pretty quick to get started and to make some tests on that. So that's basically it. And yeah, with that, we can just wrap up the whole tutorial. I already went through a little bit again this flowchart here, but yeah, what we saw was just to see what is really available in the official image of NOMAD, and then we saw how to develop our own code. So that can be either a schema, so an extension of the schema, or also some more processing. So this can lead us to fetch automatically metadata from raw files or even from Excel files that might be produced in labs or whatever kind of files where you're storing your information. Yeah, so at the end, we also arrived to really deploying a new image that can be just very easily spin up into a Docker platform. And yeah, so that was basically it for this tutorial. And in this last slide, you can find, again, the invitation link to Discord server if you are not into our NOMAD Discord server yet. And then we are leaving here a link to one sub-channel of our server that is the one dedicated to the ELNs. And as you will see, there are like channels for every kind of topic that you might be interested in. And yeah, this is just maybe redundant, but is again the link to our GitHub repo. Yeah, so thank you to everyone. Thanks to Hampus, Sartak, Sebastian, and also the developers, as Hampus already said, everyone in FAIRmat, and also to the audience to stick with us until now.